The first preseason game for the 49ers is almost in the books, and all I've got to say is pray to God nobody gets hurt. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the very first Gold Standard Instant Reaction podcast of the season. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera here with you as the 49ers and Broncos wrap up game number 1. And, ooh, man, lots to discuss, lots of takeaways from this game. Please, please, please let the 49ers stay healthy, because the longer this game went and the more you got to see the depth on this roster, or lack thereof, it became very apparent that this team better stay healthy or they're in trouble. Because the Niners are up 9-0 and Denver scores 30 unanswered points. Just right down the field. It was a preseason game. Let's just say that. Now, look, let's do our normal thing, right? Let's take the grain of salt. We'll swallow all of this with a grain of salt. We all know that. I want to say that out front. It's preseason. It doesn't count. I get that. It does matter. And it was, So let's just say after that first quarter, things kind of fell apart. But I want to hear from you. I want to hear your comments. Give me your stock up, stock down, everything you liked, everything you didn't like. I'll get as many of them in the show as I can, because I'm flying solo tonight. Now, let's start with the good, right? Let's start with the positive. First of all, it was nice to just watch an actual 49ers football game again, so we'll start with that. But the biggest takeaway positively that I have from this game is the return of Robert Saleh. You could see early on in this game, first of all, just the freaking energy and the vibe that this defense had early in the game. They were fired up. They were ready to play. And it was just fun watching the 49ers on defense to start this game. They were getting pressure on the quarterback. They were forcing him to roll out. The tackling looked much better early on in this game. It was a joy to watch. It was not like watching defense last year. Now, unfortunately, as the game went on, it felt more and more like last year. But early on, it was nice. It was really great to watch. And I thought actually Kyle Posey of Niners Nation had a really good tweet about it. And I'm going to bring it up really quick, because I thought he summarized it. Because you could see Saleh was bringing, people along the line of scrimmage. He basically would have like 5, 6, 7 people at the line of scrimmage to start the play, and some would drop out and some wouldn't, but just trying to muddy up the picture a little bit for whatever quarterback was in there for Denver, whether it was Bo Nix or Jared Stidham or whatever. But I love this tweet from Kyle Posey. Quote, "Nick Sorensen is watching this defense confused, not knowing you're allowed to run more than cover 3. You can blitz your defensive backs more than once a game, and you cannot have your defensive line do the same thing play after play." That was the reassuring thing to me and the exciting thing to me, which was, oh, that's right. We can do stuff on defense. We can intimidate the other team on defense. We can blitz guys off the edge. Chase Lucas looking at you, and get pressure on the quarterback. Chase Lucas had at least 2 just completely unblocked pressures in the game. Other defensive backs were blitzing in as well. It was so nice to see the juice that this defense had early on. And again, I say early because we know they lost it, but it was just nice to see defense making plays. There was actually one play where Robert Saleh almost got run over by somebody on the sideline. I can't remember who it was, but the Niners made a good play, and Saleh was doing his thing out there, and somebody almost crashed into him. I'm trying to see. Let me see if I can bring it up. Probably, let's see. There we go. Yeah, there it is. You can see, is that Tatum Bethune out there that nearly crashed into him? But they were pumped. It was great to see Saleh back out there on the field. And we were all hoping, right? Hey, maybe Robert Saleh can fix this defense up and do some good things. We were all hoping that might be the case. And even with basically no starters out there, we got to see a little bit of it tonight. And it was very exciting. Chris Waddell says, second string defense gang tackling. I don't know if that's Saleh or what, but the pursuit was there. Jones has a bigger arm than Purdy. Run blocking was awful. Jones has a bigger arm than Purdy. Lots of people do. Tanner Mordecai and Carter Bradley both have bigger arms than Brock Purdy, but oh God, don't worry, we'll get to them. But yeah, it was encouraging to see that early on the Niners' second string defense was giving Sean Payton's offense fits. And I know it's preseason, they don't game plan again. I get all of that stuff, but it was still nice to see. And I think we can be encouraged by that. It's okay to be happy and excited. We don't, you can be happy and encouraged and excited without thinking a guy's going to go into the Hall of Fame, right? Or without thinking it has massive implications for the regular season. It's okay to be a little happy tonight. So that was my number one takeaway, was definitely Robert Saleh. It was just so great to see him. And I just saw a comment from somebody. I apologize. There's a lot of comments coming in, but somebody commented on Guy Haberman, who was doing the TV broadcast in place of Greg Papa, who of course is out while he battles cancer. And I agree. Guy was phenomenal, like fantastic home run. Now, I don't know who did the radio call tonight. Did somebody do the radio call? I don't know. Obviously, I was watching the TV feed, but please let's get more Guy Haberman in there. Like, can we all agree he's fantastic? Definitely like that. I'm sorry, I can't find the comment, or I would give you the credit for it. But yes, I do like. Yeah, there you go. Sean Turner says Guy is the man. CJ says Guy was great. I did appreciate that. Now, some other good things. I mentioned Chase Lucas. He was everywhere tonight, flying around, and he played a long time. He was playing into the third and fourth quarter. He was making some big tackles, some quality tackles. Again, it's not a massive thing, but he played well tonight. He was one of the standout guys. And early on, one of the standout players was Marquise Siegel. Was really good, like flying around out there, in on multiple. Anytime that somebody was tackled, it felt like Marquise Siegel was in there. He made a really good one-on-one tackle in the open field against the Broncos running back. I was very impressed with Marquise Siegel. He's a guy that had incredible speed, which is something that the 49ers have not really had too much at safety, right? They had Hufanga, who did a lot of good things, but he was, a slow guy, especially for a safety. Even Malik Mustafa last year, not a burner at safety. They didn't have a ton of speed at that position. Well, Marquise Siegel has speed to spare, and he was flying around. Now, he hurt his knee, so I'm a little nervous about that. I didn't see the play. I just saw that he was in the medical tent, and then he was questionable, and I don't think he came back. So I'm a little worried about that, because I was sort of, like, okay, maybe we got something here in Marquise Siegel. There weren't a ton of rookies that we got to see do a ton. But Siegel was one of them, and he performed well in the game. Joe says, thank you for the super chat, Joe. Feels good to see some Niner football again. Happy new season, Rob. Yeah, it does. Yes, it does. I was watching with my son. He was freaking out, especially early on, which we can talk about. The Mac Jones pass to Jordan Watkins, 50 yards on the opening drive, was beautiful. It was beautiful by Mac Jones to stand in there and lob that ball up and let Jordan Watkins run under it to make a play. And it was beautiful by Watkins to track that pass, not only catch the pass, but immediately break a tackle and run down the field for 50 yards. It was a phenomenal play, and it was encouraging because we've heard some good things about Jordan Watkins in practice, and it was like right away, bam. And that's like a staple of the 49ers preseason, right? They're going to run a slot fade. That's the Trey Lance play with Danny Gray, right? Where he catches that long touchdown and we were all freaking out. Same thing, slot fade, lob it up there, let the guy go get it. And Jordan Watkins did. And that, believe it or not, on the first drive was the only third down that the 49ers converted the entire game. They did not convert a single third down the rest of the game. 1 for 12 on third down. Now, they did convert a fourth down later in that drive, I believe. It led to a touchdown, the only touchdown of the day for the Niners. But yeah, 1 for 12 on third down. I got to tell you, that was some bad offensive football. Other than that one drive, the offense for the 49ers was hideous tonight. And I get it. Again, second stringers, all that stuff, but it was bad. The quarterbacks combined to go 13 for 27 for 107 yards. But remember, 50 of those 107 yards came on that one pass to Jordan Watkins. So the rest of the game, the quarterbacks only threw for 57 yards. And oh, by the way, they threw 3 picks. I mean, it was yuck and poo offensively. And, look, Carter Bradley is not going to be getting a lot of run for the 49ers this season. You wouldn't think unless things go horribly wrong, but he was bad. Tanner Mordecai came in after him. He was bad. They couldn't complete a pass. It was an absolute struggle. Mordecai's fumbling the ball when nobody even does anything to him. It was ugly offensively. And it was even ugly before Mac Jones left, because on that second drive, Spencer Burford just completely sabotaged the 49ers on that second drive. So they scored the touchdown on the opening drive. The defense forces the Broncos to punt. Niners get the ball back at good field position because they had a good punt return. Junior Bergen had like a 28-yard punt return, which we can talk about the special teams in a minute, setting up the Niners at 1st and 10 at their 43-yard line. I'm like, all right, here we go, right? This is what we're talking about. Special teams contributing, setting the offense up so they don't have a long way to go. And Spencer Burford got absolutely worked by Nick Bonito. 3 straight plays. Burford was late off the snap at the line of scrimmage, and Bonito went right past him 3 straight times. Sacked Mac Jones, blew up the play. The whole possession was sabotaged by Spencer Burford. They actually went backwards 7 yards, and they had to punt. That was sort of the offense all night. They couldn't really run the ball, although I did like what I saw from Corey Kiner. He had 10 carries for 45 yards, but his longest yard was 10. Or his longest carry, I should say, was 10 yards. So he was not picking up chunk plays, but he was consistently moving the ball. I thought he ran hard. To me, when I watched Corey Kiner, I thought backup running back. Like, yep, he could be a Jeff Wilson type guy. Like, he just seems like, yeah, I get it. He hits the hole hard. He can break some tackles. Yep, there's a spot for him on this team, especially because Amir Abdullah got hurt in this game. I mean, they're playing Keyshawn Vaughn, who signed today with the 49ers. So they're so thin at running back. I think Corey Kiner is going to make this team. Luis Aguilar says, I think Spencer Burford is going to get cut. Luis, I disagree because he's the backup left tackle. He's the backup left tackle. Austin Pleasance is the backup right tackle. It did not look great for Spencer Burford tonight. Now, maybe he'll look better, but tonight he looked bad. I know the Broncos' defensive line is really good. We got to say that too. But also, if you're going to be a tackle, the starting tackle eventually, you got to be able to play well against good defensive lines too. And Spencer Burford absolutely didn't. Zero Shift says, Jake Moody almost missed an extra point. I don't agree with you. I mean, it wasn't right down the middle, but it was fine. If we're expecting Jake Moody to be right down the middle every time, I think we're going to, you're going to be severely disappointed. Jake Moody didn't have to do anything tonight. He must have loved it. He kicked 1 extra point. What do you have? 2 kickoffs the whole night? And that was it for Jake Moody. So he's the only one that's thrilled with the 49ers because it was easy pickings for Moody. Like the offense couldn't even put the Niners in a position to get Jake Moody on the field. They barely crossed the 50. So Jake had an easy night. We can get to the special teams. Oh, special teams started off really good. In the first quarter, I was like, hey, the special teams is on it. I mentioned the punt return that Junior Bergen had. There was a kickoff return, which I think was Amir Abdullah, or maybe it was Kiner. I got to go back at my notes and look. But it was kicked off, and it was just barely in the end zone. And the returner started to take a step to run it back and then stopped and downed it, which was smart because remember, touchbacks now go to the 35-yard line. So if you catch a ball in the end zone as a returner, you should kneel because you're going to get really good field position. And he did that. And I was like, yes, this is special teams with their head in the game, right? I loved that. In the first quarter, I thought the special teams were phenomenal. They were making tackles on returns. They had the good punt return. The kick returns were fine. There was no penalties. It was good. After that first quarter, unfortunately, I think they had a penalty on every return they had the rest of the game. Multiple holding penalties. Very, very frustrating. Thomas Morstead at one point had a 39-yard punt, which wasn't great. But even for example, there was a really bad Broncos punt. It went 25 yards. The Niners were going to get the ball at the 20. But yeah, there was a holding on the return So the Niners got pushed back to the 10-yard line. So even when the Broncos special teams bailed the 49ers out with a bad punt, 25-yard punt, we turned it into a 35-yard punt because we got a holding and we pushed the offense back to the 10-yard line. So there's definitely some things for Brant Boyer's unit to clean up on special teams for sure. Chris Waddell, thank you very much for the super chat, says, in motion, tight end blocking, and then was the first one, not Burford. Bad flashback of the Eagles NFC Championship, Purdy elbow injury, Kyle's play. Well, there was a play where, oh my God, I can't think of the tight end. Luke Farrell did have to come across the formation and block somebody. I can't remember if it was the first one, but there was one of those plays, and he couldn't get there. And Tim Ryan's like, that's a really hard block for Luke Farrell to make. And it's like, yeah, well, guess what, dude? That's your only job here, Luke Farrell. The only thing you were brought here to do is block. And whether it's a hard play to block or not, like, you got to be able to do it, because that's why they paid you a lot of money for a backup tight end to come in and block. You can't whiff like that. And he did, unfortunately. So fix that. That's one of the things that's got to get cleaned up. But yeah, you're right. It was, that was not a good sequence for the 49ers by any stretch of the imagination. That one was not high on my list. Let's see. Did I get to anyone else? I mentioned Corey Kiner, Saleh, Chase Lucas, Marcus Siegel. Yeah, those were the standouts for me, and Guy Haberman. Those were probably the positives. Some of the other negatives I didn't like. Nick Martin. Ooh, Nick Martin. He kind of reminds me of early Greenlaw, which is can run really fast, can fly around, but when he gets to the ball carrier, a lot of the time he's out of control, and so he whiffs on the tackle. There was a screenplay where, oh my God, Nick Martin was there, and the running back just absolutely destroyed him, and he whiffed. He could not even get a hand on the ball carrier. And it was just like, man, now luckily he got bailed out because it was a penalty on the play. But yeah, man. Wait, why do people think I'm making fun of Brock Purdy? I'm not making fun of Brock Purdy. Sorry, people in the chat must be talking about Brock Purdy. I don't know why, but I didn't mention Brock. Anyway, the Nick Martin, he made a couple of good tackles. He did have some good plays, but I thought he had more bad than good. I thought he was mostly out of control for a lot of the night. And even when he did make contact with the ball carrier, he's little. He had trouble bringing him down. So I think, there was a very up and down day for Nick Martin. I'm not surprised that D. Winters is going to be the linebacker next to Fred Warner. I'm not surprised we haven't heard a lot about Nick Martin in training camp after just watching that game. And as Brisbee Life on Twitch says, the hype for D. Winters better be real. Yes, it better be real. 1,000%. Because, I'm not there. Now, look, again, it's preseason. It's early. That's Nick Martin's first professional game. And I did think that David Lombardi, correctly pointed out, hey, he's been injured. He was injured last year. He has, he's working his way back into form. That's all part of it too. Now, I know that Kyle Shanahan has been speaking after the game. I just saw something that he said. Let's see. This is from Matt Barrows. According to Kyle, Upton Stout missed the game due to tightness in his calf. Oh, great. Richie Grant didn't play due to a knee issue. He'll miss a week. Michael Williams has a hyperextended knee and also will miss a week or so. Marquise Siegel may have a knee bruise. My God, man. Upton Stout is hurt now. Does every corner on this team have to get hurt? What is going on with the 49ers and these injuries? Is there something in the water? What is it, man? Juwan Jennings, calf. Upton Stout, calf. Everybody's got a calf or a hamstring. God. I was so looking forward to seeing Upton Stout. And when I saw that he wasn't in uniform, I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe that means he's the starting nickel. And maybe he is anyway. But God, everybody is getting hurt on this team. It's incredibly frustrating. Oh, man, that is such a bummer. I hope it's nothing serious with Upton Stout because, geez, everything we heard with him was that he looked awesome, that he was great, that he was balling out. Everybody that we talked to, nobody had a negative thing. Fred Warner was interviewed during the game tonight and just out of nowhere brought up Upton Stout and how good he looked. So, man, I really hope that is not serious. I guess it's good news on Michael Williams that it is, just a hyperextended knee and he's not expected to be out long-term. But again, he's going to miss a week. So does he play in the Raiders game next week? Probably not, right? So that means he may only get to play in one preseason game. So That's not necessarily encouraging. I'm trying to read some tweets as I do this. Cam Inman said Michael Williams walked out with a limp and a compression sleeve on his left leg because of Thursday's knee injury, initially believed to be a hyperextension. Oh, man. If he's still limping a couple days later, yeah, that's probably, I would say he probably will be out for longer than a week. But again, I'm not a doctor, so we'll see. Kyle said they were just playing it safe with Upton Stout. Again, do we really believe that? Do we really believe anything? All we know is that Upton Stout is hurt. We can't trust timelines when it comes to the 49ers and injuries. CJ says, I wonder if Stout would have played if it was a real game. I have no idea. Justin says the strength and conditioning needs to be addressed 100%. They just named Dustin Perry like the head lead guy for their strength and conditioning. So they think they addressed it. I think we've seen so far that it hasn't gone well from an injury standpoint. Johnny says, Shanahan said the 3 plays where Burford was burned is not fair to Burford. I don't know. I will say this. Kyle would certainly know better than me, and I would certainly know better than me just watching the TV copy. If there's one thing I've learned doing our film breakdowns every Thursday with Johnny Dell, a lot of times things on the offensive line look bad during the game, but when you break down the film, it's not necessarily what it seems. So I'm going to reserve judgment totally. If Kyle says it wasn't all on him, I'll take his word for it, but it did not look good. I will say that. I'm willing to admit I may be wrong to put as much blame as I did on him earlier in the show. That's fine. But, whoo, man, I would like to know what specifically Burford did right or wrong. Like I need more detail on that play. Okay. Chris Waddell, thank you for the super chat. Says maybe our practice field is like that Super Bowl field we had to practice on that made everyone cry for a couple days. The injuries are depressing. Now, hopefully none of these injuries are really long-term. I know Givens, I think it was Givens, hurt his pec, and he's going to miss a chunk of the year. But like everybody else, it's like hamstring, week, hamstring, couple weeks, day to day. So at least it's not like ruptured Achilles. Like Mariano Rivera ruptured his Achilles for the Yankees in an old-timers game today, which is a real thing that happened. You know, they haven't had any of those injuries, and it hasn't been anybody massive, but it does seem like they're starting to pile up. Chad Henderson says Stone Blanton looked very promising tonight. He had a nice forced fumble. He had to get, a little run. Okay. At this point late in the game, you're looking for guys that can be depth, right? And he looked like maybe he could be depth. And again, it's hard to judge because there's no game planning. There's no scheme, and you're playing against, backups. So, you don't want to get too excited, but like, hey, you know what? It's like, did this guy do something that makes me want to watch him again in next week's preseason game, right? And for me, for Stone Blanton, you could say, yeah, you know what? Kind of, I think he probably did. Definitely going to be getting some playing time next time as well. The reviews on the 49ers quarterbacks are coming in fast and furious. They are not good. Red Zone Gold 49 says Bradley and Mordecai were awful tonight. Mac Jones was okay. Even Mac, though, remember, he got 50 of his passing yards on one play, and he only threw for 74 yards on the day. So he had 3 other completions that went for a grand total of 20 yards. All right, 24 yards. Excuse me. Didn't mean to short you, Mac Jones. He was, yeah. Now, like I said, some of the Burford plays kind of impacted what Mac Jones did. He was, trust me, he was by far the best of the 49ers quarterbacks, for sure. Benali says the Niners defense outscored all 3 quarterbacks that started this game. Yikes. Yeah, with the safety. Chase Lucas got the safety on Bo Nix. I think it was Bo Nix. And that got 2 points for the defense. Those corner blitzes, man. We got used to them with Saleh and K'Wan Williams, and now we got used to it with Chase Lucas as well. Good. I like it. I know there's been some topic of this. I'm seeing a comment here. It was noticed Thursday that the Broncos do static stretching pregame. The Niners do not. I don't know. I know there's like different kinds of stretching. I have no idea if one's better than the other. I know Johnny Dell was talking about that, I think, and he was saying that no, actually the kind of stretching the 49ers do is better than static stretching. I have no idea. Here's what I do know. Whatever they're doing, damn, does it not seem to be working right now. That's all we can say for sure, right? I'm not a doctor, but damn, they do seem to have a bunch of these injuries. Brisbee Life on Twitch says, writers were making it seem like Stout had locked up the nickel, but that's no excuse for a rookie not playing in the preseason. Well, yeah, I agree. Like, you should play guys. The Broncos played a lot of their starters. Joe Burrow was playing in the preseason. Like, I do hope that Kyle gets some of the main guys some run, but I also think, and I think tonight was a good illustration of it, Kyle knows how top heavy this team is. You know, if you told me right now that nobody on the 49ers, that their starters would all play 17 games, I'd be like, hey, you know what? If they get hot at the right time, they can make a deep playoff run and maybe win a Super Bowl. That's how good their talent is at the top. But I think tonight showed when you get past that, it gets real scary real fast. And as much as Kyle would like to get these guys time in the preseason, I do think he's terrified because I think he knows how big of a deal it would be if Nick Bosa missed 4 or 5 games because of one stupid play in a preseason, you know, or if Fred Warner missed time, or God forbid Brock Purdy or Christian McCaffrey, for example. So I think that, you know, in the back of his head, especially coming off a 6-11 year, I think Kyle's like, I just can't do it. I just can't risk it. But we'll see. We'll see. I hope that he does get at least one series for these guys, but I do think that has to be in the back of his mind. When you're watching Tanner Mordecai, you're watching Carter Bradley, you're watching these guys. I mean, Robbie Chosen is out there running routes. He had a miscommunication at one point where the quarterback thought he was going to run a curl or something short, and he just took off down the field on a fly. It's like, what is there? So obviously you didn't have Ricky Pearsall tonight. You didn't have Juwan Jennings. You didn't have Brandon Ayuk. You didn't have Jacob Cowing. Cowing is unproven as well, but yeah, I think that has to enter into Kyle's thinking. And as Andre points out, Sean McVay has the habit of not playing his guys in the preseason too. So it's not like Kyle is the only one. I'm seeing some more updates from Shanahan here. Let me throw this on the screen. Shanahan said Renardo Green and Jacob Cowing will be tested tomorrow, which will determine whether they can return to practice on Monday. Remember, initially Kyle had pegged around August 14th as the date for them to return. So that makes sense that they're kind of getting back into the swing of things. Hopefully both can go, especially Cowing. I'm sorry. I want to see him play, man. I'm desperate to see that guy get out on the field. We haven't had to see it. You know, reportedly he had a really good offseason and looked really good. He was working out with Ricky Pearsall. And so there was a lot of Jacob Cowing hype. And I really hope he can get back because I do want to see it. Let's see. Cam Inman. No, this is a little interesting. First to leave the 49ers locker room, Juwan Jennings, who's been out 2 weeks with a calf injury. Interesting. Now, again, I'm not desperate for the 49ers to pay Juwan Jennings. I am not. And I don't think that they are too desperate either. Now, maybe they will be if some of these wide receivers continue to get hurt. We'll see. But I think they're willing to say, hey, we're going to let it play out and see how it goes. I don't know. Maybe Juwan Jennings' calf is really that hurt. I have no idea. But it's going to be interesting to see how that whole situation plays out, especially as the wide receiver room for the Niners maybe gets a little less cloudy. I think it's pretty cloudy right now, but hopefully as these guys get a chance to go along and play and stuff, that it'll become less cloudy. Okay, we got a little news on Marquise Siegel. Shanahan said the initial indication was that a knee injury to Marquise Siegel isn't serious, but still further testing to confirm. He noted Siegel played well before the knee issue. Yeah, he did. Like I said, he was all over the place, man. Flying in, making tackles in the run game. So I really hope he's not too banged up because there's a lot of opportunity, let's just say, at safety for the 49ers. And he looked like he was making the most out of his tonight. And hopefully he's not too hurt. D. Winters didn't get hurt. That's a good sign, right? He was out there. He was one of the few starters that actually started this game for the Niners. And I was really like, let's see if D. Winters can make it through because he really has not been able to make it through anytime he's gotten some playing time. So as far as we know, he's not hurt. That's a good sign. I'll take the wins where I can get them, especially in a game you lose 30-9, right? So good for D. Winters. Keep stacking those because God knows we're going to need you. But and CJ points out only one starter played on the offensive line tonight. That's true. That starter was Ben Barch. But the Niners, other than Corey Kiner, the run game was not spectacular, let's just say. I would have liked to see it a little more from Amir Abdullah because he looked like he had some bounce and some pop. but he got hit in the ribs by somebody, and he left the game, so we didn't get to see that. Let me see if I can see any other juicy tidbits here from the 49ers beat writers. Nothing urgent, it looks like, which I guess is good. You don't want to have any major injuries. They talked with Brock during the game. They talked with Fred Warner. I think that they would, at least Brock wants to get out there. You know, I did an interview with Dieter Kurtenbach yesterday, and he talked about how Brock is a little frustrated because with all the injuries and all the guys shuffling in and out of the lineup, that he really hasn't been able to work with guys that much or as much as he would like to, because Brock is all about chemistry and timing and anticipation. And that only gets built up if you have the opportunity to work with guys. When he's out there throwing, to Robbie Chosen, Isaiah Hodgins, guys that have no chance to do anything, it's like, what am I doing here? This is a waste of my time. The guys that I need to be throwing to are Pearsall and Jennings and maybe Jacob Cowling if he can get out there. Like, those are the guys that he needs to be throwing to. It's a waste of his time to throw to these other guys, but unfortunately there is only options right now. Trying to look in the chat here. How's everybody feeling after the first preseason game? I mean, after that first quarter, I was flying high. I was excited, man. I'm not going to lie. The offense made a big play, and they cashed in a touchdown when they got in the red zone on a nice little bounce out by Patrick Taylor Jr. It was nice to see that actually happen. I was flying high. The defense was playing well. Bo Nix was 6 of 11 for 31 yards in the game. 6 of 11 for 31 yards. That's 2.8 yards per completion. Yeah, let's just say that was a good showing by the 49ers defense. And the Broncos really didn't run the ball all night. Their longest run was 18 yards. Blake Watson had one, and Jarrett Stidham had an 18-yard scramble on 3rd and 15 that made me want to rip my hair out. But they really couldn't run the ball. I know people were talking about C.J. West and Alfred Collins. Josh Dubow of the Associated Press had a tweet that they were on the field for 32 combined pass rush snaps and had 0 pressures. That's okay. Of course you would like if they had some more, but I saw CJ West get in the backfield a couple times and redirect some runs. He didn't make the tackle, but he broke through a double team and forced the run to bounce outside. That's the kind of thing you want. That's what you really want from them. Alfred Collins doesn't have to get a single pressure to be effective in his role for this defense this year. What Alfred Collins has to do is hold the damn line. If all he does is not get moved off his spot, that is a valuable service to the 49ers and something they didn't have last year. That is the bare minimum for what you want a defensive tackle to be able to do. And if he can do nothing else but that this year, that will be a meaningful contribution to the 49ers. And I'm not saying that's what he's going to be. His first preseason game, he didn't play a lot in minicamp. He didn't play at all at minicamp because he was hurt. So we're going to give him a little bit of grace here. But what I'm saying is Alfred Collins, even if he's really good, won't necessarily fill up a stat sheet and won't necessarily fill up a PFF pressure counter. So, let's take some deep breaths on that. Defensive tackles are a little bit different. I liked what I saw from some snaps on CJ West, splitting the double team, getting in the backfield. That's, Chris Sims has a stat he likes to keep track of called F the play up. And CJ West had a couple of those. And so I thought that I was more encouraged than discouraged by what those guys saw. Benali says, I don't care about what the quarterbacks look like individually when as a unit they looked rough, which is more of a referendum on Mick Lombardi as the quarterback coach. I actually did see, I think Brian Griese was out at the joint practice, just there checking it out. Obviously, he's got Denver roots and 49ers roots that coached there last year. I'm not going to freak out about Mick Lombardi just yet. Until we see Brock, until we see Kyle Shanahan calling the plays. Remember, it was Clay Kubiak calling the plays. And I don't want to put it all on him because, I don't know, it looked like there were some miscommunications with players and some physical errors that kind of mucked things up for some of it. So I don't want to say, oh, Clay Kubiak was terrible. But I'm not going to panic too much until it's the starters and until it's Kyle. We didn't have George Kittle. We didn't have Christian McCaffrey, all that stuff. But here's the question. Did you see enough from Jordan Watkins to think he could be wide receiver 3 for the first 3 weeks? How would you feel if Jordan Watkins was your wide receiver 3 for the first 3 weeks? Would you be comfortable with that? I liked the limited reps that Demarcus Robinson had. I'll say that. Now, we know he's probably going to miss the first 3 games of the year, but I think he could be a solid contributor when he's in there. He's not going to light the world on fire, but I think he's going to be, he's a veteran player, knows what he's doing. He can contribute. I feel good about him, just even watching him in the limited snaps that we saw him today. GM18 says Watkins is serviceable. Sean Turner agrees. Jim Ohio says, dude, Alfred Collins is a second-round pick and you're already settling for bare minimum. Come on. No, I said, he could be more than that. But even if that's all that he does, I would be, again, he can fulfill a role for this team and provide a service. Hopefully he's more. I hope he's great at rushing the passer. But I'm just giving him a little bit of grace. The Niners are asking him to do things on defense that he never did before, to use techniques he's never done before in college, and he's adjusting to the highest competition that he's ever faced. So if he doesn't get a pressure in his first preseason game, I'm not freaking out, is what I'm telling you. There's time for Alfred Collins to roll into form. Let's just, again, like I said, even if all he does is hold his ground, that's valuable. He can certainly build off that. We can do both. 916 49er says, why the bleep was Carter Bradley out there so long? I think it was because he barely got any reps with the 49ers. Remember, they had Tanner Mordecai. They cut Tanner Mordecai for Carter Bradley, and he just hasn't gotten that much opportunity because most of your snaps are going to Brock or the backup quarterback. Carter Bradley's not going to get that much opportunity. So I think they wanted to leave him out there. 1, they don't care if he gets hurt, let's be honest. But 2, they wanted to get him some snaps. And unfortunately, the offense couldn't stay on the field to get him any snaps. And that was something that I brought up during the game. I understand you want to get him snaps, but when the rest of the offense doesn't stay on the field, he's taking snaps from them, essentially. If he can't move the ball, the rest of the offense can't get the snaps. So I was sort of hoping they would go to Tanner Mordecai earlier. Unfortunately, when Tanner Mordecai got in, he was terrible too. So it didn't really matter. But I think that was their thinking as to why they let him run so much. And I see a lot of Nepo baby comments. Sean Turner says, fire Gus Bradley for his son's performance. That's a funny comment. Well done, Sean. Yeah. So it was not good from the off. This was one of the uglier games I've ever seen the 49ers run preseason, postseason, regular season in the Shanahan era. And then I'm including some bad weather Buffalo games and blizzard games and all of that. It was ugly. When your quarterbacks are under 50% passing for only 107 yards in the game and you throw 3 picks and you lose a fumble, it's going to be ugly. And, a lot of what we saw tonight was very similar to what we saw last year with the 49ers. Start strong, fade as the game goes along, bad offensive plays and bad offensive turnovers, setting up the 49ers defense to have to defend a short field. And early on, that's what was happening when the Broncos were scoring. The Niners were setting them up for points. Case in point, the Niners get the safety. They get the ball back. They throw an interception. That Broncos drive begins at midfield, and they drive down and they get a field goal. Niners get the ball back. They don't do anything. They punt the ball, and they give up a 25-yard return, which starts the Broncos drive at their own 45-yard line, almost midfield. What happens? Denver goes down and gets a field goal. Niners get the ball back. What do? Throw an interception. Where does the Denver drive start? The 49ers 35-yard line. They go and get the touchdown. So when we talk about, well, the defense gave up this many points, yes, you would like to see them, that's no excuse, but the Niners were setting up the Broncos offense to be able to put points up on the board. And again, it doesn't matter for this game. It's a preseason game. Who cares? But it matters because that's exactly what we saw last year from the 49ers. And that was a disturbing trend. They have to protect the football better. Nicholas Parra, thank you for the super chat. Says Niners are a top-heavy team, so let's hope injuries are on the low side. Hopefully it gets better, but the backups out there need a lot of development. Both of those things are 100% true, Nicholas. And again, I appreciate the super chat. Yes, they need to be better, but also you can't really depend on them. You need the starters to be good and play because the talent is just not there. And when you sit out free agency and you let I can't remember the number that they threw out on the broadcast, like $300 million of talent go out the door, which is what the Niners free agents got, something like that. I don't know if it was that high, but it was a ridiculously high number of millions of dollars that they got. This is where the roster suffers. And I think that's what we saw tonight. The longer the game went on, the worse the 49ers players got, the bigger the talent gap got. I know the Broncos are playing their scrubs too. Guess what? Their scrubs were better than our scrubs by a lot. By a lot. Strawberry React says, does anybody remember that Raiders game in 2023 and how it was the end of the world and then we went on to play in a Super Bowl? Not saying this is the same, but we can't overreact either. Yeah, I started the show with that, right? Take the grain of salt. We all understand that. The games don't count. Some stuff we see does matter, though. And that's our job to sort of parse through this as we go along. What matters, what doesn't, what's important, and what doesn't. And I think another thing to keep an eye on is what carries over game to game, right? If it's possible they go out next week against the Raiders and look a lot better. But if they don't, then you start to see a trend, and then you start to get really worried, like, hey, this could be something that could affect the team in the regular season. So we don't want to freak out about any one game. We certainly don't want to freak out about any preseason game. But when we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, if we are seeing some trends, good or bad, that's something that I think carries a lot more weight than anything that happens in an individual game for an individual player. Benjamin, friend of the show, says, just got home, needed a lot of drinks to make it through the night. I know people were roasting in the seats early on, so that's never a good thing. Anyone that's been to Levi's knows that can happen. Jim Ohio says, the culture and enthusiasm seem to be paper thin. I'm worried about that trend. Oh, I kind of disagree with you, Jim. I mean, the enthusiasm was there. At the beginning of this game, they were rocking out, especially defensively. There was enthusiasm. And I think if the 49ers offense could have sustained itself, I think you would have felt that a little more. When Mac Jones connects with Jordan Watkins on that play, it was like, yo, let's go. The crowd was into it. Like, everybody was pumped up. Patrick Taylor ran the ball into the end zone, and we were like, yes, here we go. Let's go. It didn't sustain itself because the offense was putrid. But the defense sustained it early on. They got that safety. I think that the enthusiasm is there. You just can't be awful in the other parts of the game. That sort of, what do they say, takes the air out of the stadium. JJ00 says, grandpappy kicker punter combo seemed to function well. Hey, shout out John Weeks, the long snapper, who made a tackle on a punt. Respect. You don't see that very often. Thomas Morstead was fine. He was a punter. That's fine. But now he says, I wanted the 49ers to sign Jarrett Stidham. Sean Turner says Mordecai and Carter Bradley should have to buy their own Gatorade. 916 49er says Chase Lucas was filled with enthusiasm. You could tell Chase Lucas was so excited to be playing well because he was celebrating after every tackle like he won the Super Bowl. He was just like, I'm putting out good tape. Coaches are going to see this, and this is a really good day for me. And I completely get it because that's exactly what the preseason is. They don't care about the outcome of the game. They care that when the coaches are in reviewing the tape, they're going to say, hey, that's a good play from Chase Lucas. Oh, that's another good play from Chase. Hey, Chase, good tackle there. That's all they care about. That's all they should care about. And he has every reason to be excited because he killed it tonight. He was great. Chris Waddell says, is Amari Cooper still available? I feel like wide receiver is going to be a problem again this year. Look, they had the opportunity. They could have signed Keenan Allen. He was sitting out there. Instead, they signed, Quintez Cephas and guys like that. They could have signed Amari Cooper. I mean, he's still out there now. Maybe they feel differently after this game. That'll be interesting to see if they make any additional free agent moves. But, those guys were out there. They could have signed Julian Blackmon at safety, and they didn't. So we'll see if they make any moves this week. That'll be definitely something to keep an eye on. JJ00 says, Weeks and Morstead are combined 78 years old. Hopefully neither have to make many tackles this year. Might have to call life alert. Wow. I wouldn't worry. Punter and long snapper can be pretty old. If your punter's got to make the tackle, things have already gone wrong, JJ. Eric Shun says, Equanimous St. Brown. Yeah, he's out for the year, I believe. I think he got hurt. I'm pretty sure they put him on injured reserve. So Zero Shift says they got to find a backup tackle. Again, I want to hear more about why Kyle was letting Spencer Burford off the hook. But certainly, I think Spencer would tell you it was not his best night. So, Strawberry React says there were literally no starters on offense, skill position wise. The offense will be fine. Yeah, again, I'm not freaking out. I'm just saying tonight the offense was bad. I'm certainly not freaking out. But it was a lot of miscommunication. A lot of guys that didn't get a lot of reps and whatever. I'm sure Kyle would say it was a success because we didn't have a ton of injuries. And in that standpoint, it was, although we got to see on Marquise Siegel, like I said. But we'll see. I'm not seeing anything new from any of the 49ers beat writers. So, yeah, it looks like it wasn't too crazy. Okay, here is Kyle Shanahan talking. All right, let's see if I can get this up. Looks like this is Kyle talking about that sequence with Spencer Burford. Let me throw it up on the screen. I have not heard this, so we're going to hear it together live, but let me throw it up. Here's Kyle talking about the sequence.
Benito had a series where he just kind of ruined the whole series. How do you feel about your backups at offensive tackle right now?
I mean, he did ruin that whole series. One was on our tight end going across the formation. He just played past all the way, so that wasn't on a tackle. But it was 3 plays in a row. The next 2 plays, we went on the quick counter and were lined up wrong, so he was able to jump the snap. So I thought that was a little tough for Spence. And then on the 3rd down, we had a bust by a player who was supposed to be outside presence on him. Spence was expecting a chip, so he just sitting there inside out, and there was no guy there. So Benito's a hell of a player, so we knew that would be a challenge. But I thought those 3 plays in a row were a little unfair to Spence.
That makes sense to me, honestly. Like, that explanation checks. And that's why I think, like, you can't always tell from the TV copy, especially with offensive line, who did what wrong. So that makes sense to me. That makes me feel, I guess, better about Spencer Burford. Doesn't make me feel better about the other parts of the team that seemingly broke down. But yeah, okay. That explanation, sometimes coaches will defend a guy just because they don't want to badmouth a guy. But to me, that seemed logical. What he said made sense to me. So, okay. And you know what? Good question. From that sounded like it was Larry Kruger. Good question there from him too. So I'm glad he asked it. Gorgeous says, tough for Spence. The guy is going to start 3 or more games this year when Trent is out. Yeah, well, but again, Kyle explained, not all of it was his fault. So look, maybe this is the teaching opportunity, right? Let's not freak out just yet. It wasn't good. It could be better. Both of those things can be true. Doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Man, some of the people in the chat are fired up. Sell the Team York says Kyle and Lynch should have been fired last offseason. Yeah, we're going to fire Kyle and John after the 49ers went to the Super Bowl? That's really when you want to fire your head coach and your GM? That seems pretty crazy to me. Cosmo says Kyle or Lynch should be fired if the offensive line continues to be a problem this season. Again, I keep saying this. The offensive line was not nearly as bad as you think it was. Was it great? Absolutely not. It could be better for sure, but it was middle of the road. It wasn't as bad as you say. It really wasn't. Not every time somebody gets pressure is it on the offensive line, and no offensive line prevents all pressures and all sacks. Like, we got to be realistic about what we have with the 49ers. It's not nearly as bad as you think. I promise you. Every metric that we have for grading offensive line proves it. And if you go watch the film breakdowns that Johnny Dell and I have done on Thursdays of the Niners offensive line, the film proves it too. Everybody loves the Eagles offensive line. They gave up 38 sacks last year and 36 the year before and 38 the year before that. And I'm not saying the Eagles have a bad offensive line. I'm saying every offensive line gives up pressures and sacks. It's not like the 49ers are the only one. That's my only point. It's not about a Jalen Hurts Eagles conversation, but my only point is that, I think 49ers fans feel like, well, if we just had a better offensive line, that pressure never would have happened. It's like, no, the other guys get paid too. Chris Waddell says, Kyle's ums drive me crazy. No wonder we get so many delayed games. Imagine the play calls coming in with an umbrella between every third word. Okay, that's funny. I never thought of that. But I bet you that when he's calling the plays, there's no whatsoever, because I bet he's locked in. Kyle is just I think like when he's with the media, he second guesses himself as he's speaking because he knows we're going to dissect what he says and he doesn't want to say the wrong thing. But I also think he's not the most articulate guy when it comes to talking about certain things. And so I think he just gets in his head and he tries to be careful with what he says. But I bet when he's calling those plays, he's banging them out, especially because you're also just reading it off a sheet too. He's not thinking of what to say, right? He's just reading the name of the play. And JJ00 brings up a good point. I don't think people understand what a minuscule amount of available talent is at the league for O-line. It's supply and demand, and there's no supply. You're right. I mean, Jalen Moore got $15 million from the Chiefs. He couldn't even start for the 49ers last year. So that's another thing, too. It's not like there's just a bunch of good guys that are out there waiting to be picked up or waiting to be drafted, for that matter. But I do agree Kyle Shanahan does say the word way too much. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thank you so much, everybody. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. If this is your first time checking us out, usually I have a partner for these. Today I'm flying solo because a couple of hosts weren't available, but usually we do have a partner, so it's a lot more conversational. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Shout out to all our YouTube channel members. If you want to become a member, it's less than $3 a month. You get custom emojis, membership badges, and priority comment response. I'll be live with Vish Kumaran on Monday, breaking down this game, reacting to everything that we saw, reacting to a lot of the injury news as well. It feels so damn good to be back doing these instant reaction shows. I love them. I missed everybody after the show. I love sharing this and commiserating with you. I really do appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Again, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you on Monday.